thank you so much. Again, great to be with the three of you. And I wanted to kind of pick up off of some of the conversations that you just heard with the other panel. And I thought, Phil McKinney, to you, one of the interesting things that we heard from the programmers is how the technology is not somehow, for the cable companies, technology hasn't really caught up with what consumers want, right? And it hasn't made it smooth enough, this whole idea of TV everywhere. So what's coming out of CableLabs? What's coming out of your company that's going to allow the consumer experience to be better and better?
Well, from CableLabs' perspective, one area that we're working closely with all the members, cable operators on, is really the improvement of high-speed data. We've got DOCSIS 3.1, which now gives multi-gigabit speeds for the members, which allows them to consume more of that content, to be able to carry it around. Second area is the improvement in wireless, so Wi-Fi in the home, Wi-Fi in the community, those types of things. The comment in the previous panel around the ease of authentication. There's actually a lot of work going on amongst the members, cable operators and CableLabs, around how do we do a better job of identity management and authentication. So it just automatically happens. The user doesn't have to think about, or as was mentioned before, remember what their login credentials are in order to get access to those services. So there's a lot of work going on in a lot of different areas, and everybody in the industry is really rallied around how do we just make that insanely simple.
I'm just curious though on authentication, since that just seemed to be a topic that we became focused on. Why didn't the industry figure that out, that was going to be a problem for customers before rolling that out?
Well, I think part of it is the complexity of the variety of devices that people are willing to consume on, the radical changes that are happening in the technology state. When you look at things coming out of Silicon Valley, and there's something new every other day that people get excited about. The other is making sure that you have the rights and you're approved to distribute that content. So part of it is a little bit of a catching up on the technology side, but also negotiating the rights so that you can deliver those content on those devices. Just because you have the rights on TV does not mean, as a cable operator, you have the rights to deliver that content on a TV everywhere. So it's one of the reasons why, if you pick up your device, you may not have your entire channel lineup from your cable operator today. It's not because the cable operator, it's part of just this industry of catching up from the standpoint of getting the distribution rights to allow you to do it across all those device platforms.
Michael, when you look at your company 5 years from now, do you believe, because I've heard this from many CEOs, that technology and innovation that's coming out from Silicon Valley is going to completely transform your company and it'll look completely different in 5-10 years?
It already has. I would have answered the question about Netflix differently, so if you want to ask me, I'll answer. But if you look at just online video and consumption of online video, it has impacted every aspect of our business. It has driven network development and technology. We're investing far more in our broadband infrastructure. It has changed how we interact with content providers, the rights that we secure online, out of home, off footprint, in multiple windows. It has impacted our relationship with regulators. The entire net neutrality debate is about video. Don't be confused for a second. It's all about video. It's half the consumption on the network today. In Europe it's less, but it's growing. And whether it's a fast lane or volume-based billing, it's all about video. And so it's changed very much our relationship with regulators. It's impacted the competitive environment that we operate in. So the innovations you're describing, Netflix as an example, has already impacted us. And I'd say one more thing. It did expose a failure of ours. It exposed that we have a massive functionality gap. We have great content. We have great networks. We have massive, speeds and terrific relationships. But we had a and great programming delivery. But we had a functionality gap. Simple as that. It was easier, cooler, simpler to access content through a Netflix environment, easier to find content, navigate, search, be recommended to. And we're bridging that functionality gap. We've launched Horizon in Europe, Comcast has launched X1 and X2, and I see it in my household. My kids spend far more time on X2 than they do on other environments because it's giving people what they want, a better user experience, a slicker environment. That, to me, if you bridge that functionality gap, which we didn't do, I think you've more or less solved the problem.
I mean, this is open to all three of you, but what happened there? What happened with not seeing that functionality gap, as you call it?
I'll tell you something. Did we invent the DVR? No. but every cable operator provides a DVR today.
Okay.
You don't have to be first necessarily to find your own weaknesses and react to them. So I'm not concerned in the long run, and I don't think most operators are, but we have to work together because it requires scale to deliver a new experience. Mm-hmm. So we're cooperating with Comcast and Time Warner on the RDK platform, which is a software environment that works for advanced set-tops and cloud-based interfaces. And so if we work together as an industry, we can achieve anything, quite frankly. But I don't stress the past, just worry about the future.
Phil, and tell me a little bit about what's going on with your investments in mobile in the Canadian market.
Well, we are a mobile company, so I mean we're a cable company, but we're a mobile company too. So we don't experience some of the same problems that are existing down here. We offer Wi-Fi, but we don't offer it as a competitor to ourselves. We just offer it. Mm-hmm. So there's a big difference in how we approach mobility. But it all amounts to the same thing in the end. Small screens, people want small screens, want to watch it anywhere, everywhere, anytime, and they want to get to it as easily as they possibly can. That's all it is. It's very simple.
Yep.
What is the future of screens? In 5 years, what is the screen going to look like for the consumer? What is it?
Well, there's everybody gets all excited about 4K, ultra high def resolution. But today when you look at what people are doing on the small devices they carry in their pockets, so I still think we're going to see a wide diversity of devices, and people are going to pick the appropriate content. Short form, typically for the smaller devices, long form content for the bigger screens. Screen sizes will continue to grow in 4K. You're going to look at screen sizes that are going to start at 60, 65 inches and go bigger for your home in 4K. You need that size to really detect.
I'd say a couple things. Big screens are alive and well. All right, 150 hours of television in the U.S. It's been flat a month. It's been flat forever.
But aren't you surprised that people can watch movies on a small screen like that?
Well, let me finish. So the point I think is that it's alive and well today. 85% of viewing is still on the big screen. 15% on other devices. It's more like 95.5 in Europe. But that 15% is coming from other activities because the amount of TV time and linear TV time is relatively flat. As a cable industry, it's good news, I think, because number one, when you walk into the household, if you have children and you don't immediately instruct them to get on the Wi-Fi network, your AT&T bill or your Verizon bill is through the roof. So in that regard, 70% of tablet activity is in the household. So we're that connective tissue, if you will, to the internet for any device. Secondly, we're in the mobile business in Europe. We have 4 million mobile subs. It's 1.2 billion in revenue, growing very fast. So for us, we will be in mobility. And then lastly, our services, as we started the conversation, are available on all devices. So TV everywhere, call it what you want. In Europe, if you're a customer of ours with a Horizon platform, you can watch your television on any device. So we're somewhat indifferent to that. I think I'm not concerned about it.
What's the biggest difference you've seen between the U.S. and the European market, Mike?
Oh, there's a lot of differences. I mean, we have the same basic drivers. We're still focused on, triple play penetration, except that we have 10 million homes that are single play, so we've got some more growth. It's all about broadband speeds and broadband consumption and broadband penetration. But we have huge markets like Germany with 70%, 30% of homes don't have broadband at all. So there's still a fair amount of underlying growth. Our digital platforms are very similar to what's being developed here, but we have 8 million homes still watching analog television. So there's a fair amount of growth. And then mobile for us is the quad play is really an important part of our growth it's a third of our growth in the next 5 years. So we're very much in the mobile business, as you are, and we're doing it through reseller arrangements. We're not building mobile networks, but mobile is a big piece of our business. The macro environment's solid. 80% of our revenue comes from 5 countries, and so it's all 2 to 3% GDP growth, but it's also highly fragmented, and we were talking about that backstage. The European telecom environment is fragmented and a bit unhealthy. So there's huge consolidation. I mean, we've done 50 billion in acquisitions in the last 5 years to help consolidate the European market, much as the US is consolidated, and that's inevitable. So consolidation is a real important theme for us.
And consumers in Europe or just overseas, are they consuming their content we're looking at online platforms, are they consuming them in a different way than they are here in the US?
I'd say on average, our average consumer is downloading 1.7 gigabytes a day, which is up 8-fold in the last, maybe 10-fold in the last 7-8 years, growing 30-40% a year, same as the US. But our broadband speeds are a little faster. So our average our average consumer today is getting 50 meg. Vast majority of our new ads are 100 meg. Our top speeds are 200 to 500. So we had to push the speed accelerator because it's a slightly more competitive market in broadband, which is why 3.1 is hugely important to us.
Well, tell us,
We'll be the first to roll that out.
Phil, tell us about DOCSIS 3.1. I mean, how transformational is it going to be for consumers?
Well, from the standpoint of what the consumers today, as Mike was sharing, our European members are moving very aggressively into the higher speeds, 500 meg services and above. 3.1 really allows the cable operators on a worldwide basis, because we've now been able to negotiate a consistent standard globally with all of our members to standardize on 3.1, which will be able to give you multi-gigabit speeds, 10 gig down, 1 gig up, maximum is what the design criteria is for 3.1. So now, and it's over the existing plant. So from the standpoint, there's no digging new ditches, there's no, nothing you gotta do to the home.
And that's very important.
From the standpoint. So therefore you can take what everybody's been investing in this industry over the decades and be able to take that into a multi-gigabit speed. So rather than, we get into these arguments over fiber and, look, even if you look at the total fiber miles the cable industry has deployed, we're the largest deployer of fiber today than many of the telecoms that are out there. From the standpoint, though, of is how are you going to serve all of the homes that we serve today? You have to have a technology that works on our existing plant. So with 3.1, we will have first prototype hardware at the end of this year. Certifications begin in 15. You'll see early deployments in the second half of 15 and broad deployments on a global basis in 16.
And how widely adapted do you think it's going to become?
Oh, if you talk to any of the CEOs from any of the cable operators globally, in CableLabs, we now cover all of North America, Europe, Asia, including China, Japan, Taiwan.
We'll roll it out as soon as it's ready.
Yeah, it's
I'm sure, just as with 3.0, we rolled it out immediately because we have fiber competition and VDSL competition, and speed is a very important factor. So It's a great innovation for this industry. It only happens because we work together through CableLabs as an industry, and there needs to be more of that because scale is everything in this business. Everybody in the audience knows that, and without scale, we don't thrive. We're competing with hypergiants who can launch businesses overnight. They don't have to buy spectrum, they don't have to build networks, they don't have to do anything. And as an industry, strength in arms is really the...
How closely are you watching Charlie Ergen, for instance, and what he's going to...
I can see his building from my office. So.
What, he's going to be rolling out internet TV, his version of internet TV this summer. How closely are you watching it, and what do you think?
I think he's a very, very smart, successful entrepreneur. So you would be well advised to watch everything and anything he does. But he does also have that old pioneering spirit where not everything he does is going to work, and he's okay with that. So I would, you watch what he does, and but you also realize that a certain amount of things that he does aren't going to work, and he's cool because he measures success differently than the rest of us in some cases. So I don't, in terms of what he's launching, he's been working on that for quite some time. So we should all pay attention.
Well, I think the key there is you got to watch everything, just as Mike said, right? It's if you're going to play in the innovation game, you can't assume that the only source of ideas is yourself. So you have to be able to be willing and open to really reach out and see what other people are doing and leverage the best.
Phil Lind, you've been quiet for a little while. Tell me your thoughts on that.
I'm listening and I'm agreeing, particularly on the Netflix question earlier on. I mean, I think this Netflix continues to play an important role in our future. The deal with Comcast, for example, that's really a breakthrough in terms of how the internet's going to be treated.
We rolled TiVo. We rolled the Netflix app out onto our TiVo platform in the UK, which we acquired through Virgin Media, and it's doing fine. So in that instance, we actually partnered with Netflix. If you're on our advanced digital set-top, You can search for content. It'll search everything, including Netflix. If you want to watch Netflix, fine. But you don't have to leave our environment necessarily. You can stay within the cable environment. We may do that in other markets.
Was it popular, by the way, or has it become
fine.
popular?
Yeah, it's working fine. Yeah, but in other markets, we might launch our own OTT services, or we'll acquire, or we'll just enhance our SVOD programming. So we're going to do it differently in each market. But I think it's important for all of us, and it's happened in some smaller operators here, to be willing to embrace, that form of experience, and to steal the best of it and do it just as well. That's really the key.
Consumers. We spoke about a couple of things that consumers want, right? You mean authentication is one of them, but also higher speed, faster speeds, right? And they want to have a seamless interface. From your experience, being in touch with consumers and what the market wants, ultimately, what is the big holy grail? What's the holy grail that's going to that's going to really make a difference?
Well, I can tell you what it isn't, which is that we still have not come up with the proper formula for customer care, consumer care. I mean, it is plaguing us because we're spending more money, we're developing more systems, but our customer expectations are rising too, so that we might have satisfied them on a 5 years ago, but now they're expecting more, and we're still not there in terms of what they expect us to be delivering, and it's a major problem for us.
And why do you think that hasn't been addressed fast enough?
Oh, it's a dread. I mean, we spend hours. I mean, thousands of people spend, all their full time on this thing. It just is a tough nut to crack.
We've done a couple things differently. Well, not differently, but we've had some success in Europe on that. 90% of our new advanced set-tops are self-install, plug and play. When you can just plug something in and it works, avoids a truck roll, avoids a phone call. That's magic. Consumers appreciate that. We've also embedded, net promoter scores and, really queried our customers. Are we any good? And you drive incentive plans and compensation plans along that line. People and your employees react to. So.
Are the ratings of the cable operators in Europe higher than they are here in the U.S.? I
don't have the exact numbers, but we struggle from the same issues, as do telecom operators. And, it's a high-touch business. Nobody ever calls Google. It's a high-touch business, and we have to be, as Phil says, much better at that.
Well, is there any technological, innovation or something in the pipeline, Phil, where it addresses the very issue that Phil Lind is talking about?
Well, there's a couple things. One is we've been working very closely with the operators on doing predictive tools. So part of the problem that drives, calls in and customer satisfaction issues is some form of an outage. So we've done some predictive tools that actually can predict issues in the network before the consumer ever sees the problem, those kinds of things. And the key there is if you can solve the problem so because they have this expectation that I'm never going to have a problem. Well, nothing is ever 100% foolproof, right? There's always going to be, and so the question is can we really address the issues before the consumer actually ever sees them? Because then you head it off, and therefore you do continue to raise that bar. So it's one of many tools, and as Phil shared, this isn't something where we've just, the industry is just sticking their head in the sand. Every major MSO's got thousands of people who just constantly are working at how do I do this and how do I take this problem out? How do I make this faster? How do I reduce this customer frustration issues? But as Mike said, this is a high-touch industry.
And this industry has been counted out. You're very young, you probably don't remember.
A
dozen times. And I would not bet against it. It's reinvented itself many times in the last 50 years. And I think we've got tremendous opportunity going forward.
Yep.
All right, well, on that note, I know I've got to wrap up this panel. Thank you so much to all of you, Michael, Phil Lind, and Phil McKinney. Thank you very much. And thank you again for allowing me to host this panel.